Most games are judged during the height of their popularity. When everyone is excited, it's easy to confuse hype with quality. But 2 years have passed since Shadow of the Erdtree released. The debates have settled. The excitement is gone. So now comes the real test. Does this expansion still deserve to be called one of the greatest DLCs ever made? Today we're revisiting everything that made Shadow of the Erdtree so special. From its incredible world to its level design and brutal bosses, controversial difficulty, and unforgettable moments. To answer one simple question, was the hype actually justified? Shadow of the Erdtree takes a different approach from the base game while preserving everything that made Elden Ring so special. The main game was all about scale. Every region felt enormous. The Land of Shadow, however, isn't necessarily smaller. We still have colossal castles, gigantic creatures, and sprawling landscapes. But the better word would be denser. Instead of focusing purely on size, Shadow of the Erdtree focuses on density. Every area feels carefully designed and interconnected, even though each region has its own distinct identity. Nothing feels randomly stitched together. Everything flows naturally into the next area. And a huge part of why this works so well is the incredible verticality of the Land of Shadow. Seriously, the altitude here is mind-blowing. You begin in a beautiful plain covered in golden flowers, and in the distance, you immediately notice a massive fortress dominating the horizon. Around the edges of the map, you can also spot cliffs that descend far below and strange pieces of land that seem impossibly far away. I can't be the only one who looked at those places and assumed they were just part of the background to make the world look bigger. Then, you realize you're actually exploring those same areas you once thought were just scenery. Or you discovered an entire region hidden beneath your feet that you never noticed because it was so far below. Or you finally reached a place so high above that you originally assumed it was just a wall meant to keep you inside the playable area. They did it again. From Software completely unleashed their creativity, not just with the layout of the world, but with how diverse and breathtaking every region feels. This DLC fulfilled the wish I always had while playing the base game. As much as I loved Elden Ring's vibrant world, From Software has always been known for darker settings. You know, Bloodborne, Dark Souls. Those games had an oppressive atmosphere that I absolutely loved. I'm not saying that's missing from Elden Ring, but the base game traded that for a brighter world full of color. And while I loved that art direction, there was always part of me that missed those darker environments. Well, I think that Shadow of the Erdtree gives us the best of both worlds. It preserves the vibrant beauty of the lands between while introducing the gloomy atmosphere that made the Souls series so memorable. And honestly, I couldn't be happier. The contrast in art direction is incredible. The lands between feel more alive and radiant, while the Land of Shadow feels abandoned, haunting, and almost forbidden. It's filled with death, graves that stretch across the landscape, and forgotten cultures and hidden truths lie buried beneath the surface. Things the inhabitants of the lands between were never meant to witness. And I'm not saying one style is better than the other. I'm just glad we get to experience both. Every new area in this expansion is beautiful and fascinating. I gotta be honest, I found many of them even more interesting than some regions in the base game. Maybe I'm a bit biased because I've spent hundreds of hours in the lands between and know that world by heart. But everything here feels mysterious in a way that constantly pushes you to keep exploring. I think that my favorite moment in the entire DLC was discovering the Abyssal Woods. I was trying to reach the upper eastern section of the map. I found a hidden illusory wall, and I thought, that's it, I finally found the way. Instead, I stumbled into a dungeon. At first, I assumed it would be like every other dungeon. You clear it, grab a cool weapon or armor set at the end, and move on. Imagine my surprise when I discovered an entire underground region hidden beneath everything. I never imagined I'd actually be able to explore that part of the map. And somehow, I found it completely on my own. Then I arrived at the very bottom of the Land of Shadow. A massive, dim forest so unsettling that even Torrent refuses to enter. Like, come on, if Torrent is afraid, what am I supposed to do? That guy has faced literal demigods by my side. And you know what? At the end, the payoff wasn't exactly what I expected. I thought some gigantic, unstoppable creature would be lurking in the darkness. A monster you weren't even meant to fight. Instead, you encounter those terrifying frenzied enemies. I won't deny it, they're still incredibly creepy. But they weren't quite what all that build-up had led me to imagine. Even so, I absolutely loved this entire region. I found it to be very beautiful and relaxing in a way. Until I discovered Midra's Mens. I'm telling you, The variety in this DLC is phenomenal. You have an entire line of dragons filled with jagged peaks and violent storms. Then there's this breathtaking cerulean coast with its endless blue shoreline. Right above it, you find crimson fields that create an incredible coast against everything surrounding them. And then there's the opening area itself. Those endless fields of gold and wheat always remind me of the ending of Gladiator. They almost feel heavenly. It's such a peaceful and interesting place that it naturally invites you to keep exploring, until you reach one of the incredible legacy dungeons waiting beyond it. One thing that I will say is that I wish there were more legacy dungeons. There are only 3 major ones, along with a few smaller dungeons. The first one you encounter is Belurat, the tower settlement. I know I'm starting to sound repetitive, but I absolutely love the architecture they went with. It feels like a blend of Mesopotamian influences and the ancient mythology, making it unlike anything else in Elden Ring. At the end of it, you face the divine beast Dancing Lion, a boss inspired by traditional Chinese lion dances, brought to life in a way that only From Software could pull off. And even from Belurat itself, you can already see another mysterious tower looming high above, shrouded in shadow. So you press onward and eventually arrive at Castle Ensis, which serves as a gateway to the rest of the Land of Shadow. You fight one of my favorite bosses in the DLC, R'Lana, the Twin Moon Knight. Remember R'Nala from the base game? This is her sister, and everything about this fight is incredible. Her elegant moveset, the spectacle of watching her dual-wield blades imbued with fire and magic that reminds you of Sullivan in Dark Souls 3, and especially her soundtrack. Those rising violins are absolutely phenomenal, and they easily became my favorite piece of music in the entire expansion. After that comes the Shadow Keep. I honestly don't think there's another structure in the lands between that feels this enormous. Maybe Langdale, but that's a city. This is an entire building. It's essentially a giant vertical maze filled with towering libraries, hidden passages, corpses piled throughout its halls, NPC questlines, valuable key items, breathtaking views, and enough secrets to keep you exploring for hours. You know, illusory walls, optional paths, hidden rooms. There's always something waiting to be discovered. And at the very top awaits Mesmer, the face of the DLC, the character From Software showcased in almost every trailer. And without getting too deep into spoilers, he's one of the most fascinating characters in the entire expansion, with some incredibly important lore implications. And finally, there's Enid Ilim, which is essentially the upper half of Belurat Tower, now transformed into something almost divine. And oh my god, I hated that staircase. Those landing enemies gave me flashbacks to the Silver Knight archers in Arnorlando. If you've played Dark Souls, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But once you push through, you're rewarded with one of the most breathtaking locations in the game. A city floating high above the clouds, serving as both a gigantic mausoleum and a conduit that channels the spiritual energy towards the Divine Gate, the place where gods are born. And waiting there is the final boss, which brings us to the bosses themselves and the difficulty. Let's talk about the difficulty. I've seen plenty of people complain that Shadow of the Erdtree is simply too hard. I even remember the DLC getting a review bumped when it launched because of it. And you know what I have to say to that? I understand where those complaints come from. This expansion is incredibly challenging, but what exactly is wrong with that? We're talking about the DLC for one of the most difficult games of the last decade. It's supposed to push you harder than the base game, and I actually think that From Software came up with a brilliant solution. You see, you can enter the DLC at almost any level, but your character level isn't what matters most anymore. Instead, your strength is determined by the Erdtree fragments. These special items are scattered throughout the Lands of Shadow, increasing both your damage and your survivability every time you collect some of them. It's a progression system that reminds me a lot of Sekiro. Rather than endlessly farming runes, the game rewards you for exploring. And that's exactly why I think it works so well. Every forgotten corner of the map suddenly becomes worthwhile, because you never know when you'll find another fragment that makes your next encounter just a little more manageable. So exploration becomes progression, and that's honestly brilliant. It also gives you another reason to search every inch of the map, alongside some of the coolest armor sets and weapons in the entire game. Seriously, look at this. I'm literally Sauron. It's awesome. This was probably the first time in Elden Ring where I was constantly swapping armor sets throughout my playthrough instead of sticking with the same outfit from beginning to end. The new weapons are equally impressive, constantly encouraging you to experiment with completely different playstyles. There's big katanas, a bunch of new types of weapon, and considering how demanding these fights can be, you're gonna need every advantage you can get, because these bosses, they're no joke. Some of the toughest From Software has ever created. You know what? I'm gonna tell you a secret, just between you and me. I haven't even defeated the final boss. For the longest time, I simply gave up after what felt like my 200th attempt against Promised Consort Radahn. I'm not even mad. As a Souls fan, I've always wanted to fight these legendary figures at the height of their power. Most of the time, we face them after they've already fallen from grace. They're old, they're wounded, they're corrupted, or they're only a shadow of who they once were. Seeing Radahn in his prime felt like finally getting that opportunity, and I really appreciate that. He completely destroyed me. I couldn't beat him alone, I couldn't beat him with my Mimic tier, I couldn't beat him with Asbak helping me, and somehow, I still love the fight. I will admit that Radahn is the only boss that I think crosses the line into feeling unfair. The rest are challenging, but almost always manageable. Maybe not completely alone, but hey, that's the beauty of Elden Ring. You always have options. Throughout the DLC, you can summon many of Miquella's followers to aid you in battle. Freya can help you against the Divine Beast Dancing Lion. Damn, that's a long name. Needle Knight Leda can assist you against Rolana. Hornstein joins you against Mesmer. Egon? Well, I don't even think I ever wanted to summon an NPC more than Egon. Not because I needed help. Well, let's be honest, I did. But just hearing him scream at Bill is one of the greatest moments in From Software history. It's so epic. I still get a smile on my face when I remember the "Curse you, Bill!" What an incredible fight. Probably my favorite fight in the entire DLC, and my favorite dragon fight From Software has created. And finally, like I mentioned before, Sir Ansbach can stand beside you against Radahn. What a cool NPC. He's my favorite character in this DLC. I love that the game gives you the freedom to decide how difficult you want these encounters to be. You can fight them completely alone, you can summon NPCs, you can bring your Mimic tier, or you can use both. The choice is entirely yours, and I really appreciate that. One of my biggest criticisms of the base game was how often it reused bosses. Here that problem almost disappears. Shadow of the Erdtree is packed with memorable encounters that all feel unique. Midra, the Scattered Tree Avatar, Metyr, Mother of Fingers, Romina, Saint of the Bud, Bale, Mesmer, Rolana, Radahn. Every single one brings something different to the table. They're difficult, they're spectacular, their music is phenomenal, and above all else, they're just incredibly fun to fight. So, 2 years later, does Shadow of the Erdtree still live up to the hype? Absolutely. In fact, I think it's one of the few expansions that actually became better once the excitement died down, without everyone arguing online about the difficulty, the final boss, or whether it could possibly live up to Elden Ring. You're left with what truly matters. An incredible world to explore, some of the coolest levels From Software has ever created, fantastic legacy dungeons, memorable bosses, beautiful music, amazing lore, and an expansion that constantly rewards your curiosity. It took everything that I love about Elden Ring and refined it even further. The world feels denser, exploration feels rewarding, and the atmosphere perfectly blends the colorful beauty of the lands between with the darker tone that made me fall in love with From Software's earlier games. Is it perfect? No. It's missing some torrent armor sets. Jokes aside, it's pretty much everything I could have asked for. And yeah, I believe that Promised Consort Radahn pushes the line between difficult and unfair more than any other boss in the DLC. But those are small complaints in an expansion that gets almost everything else right. Shadow of the Erdtree isn't just a great DLC, it's one of the greatest expansions I've ever played. I don't think I'll ever forget my first journey through the Land of Shadow. That feeling of uncovering an entirely hidden region, stepping into the Abyssal Woods for the first time, hearing Egon scream as Bel charges its attacks, standing before Mesmer, finally reaching Enid Elim. Those are moments that stay with you. So thank you, Shadow of the Erdtree, for taking something I already loved and somehow making me love it even more, and for reminding me why From Software continues to be one of my favorite developers. And thank you for watching. If you made it this far and enjoyed the video, I'd really appreciate it if you left a like and subscribed. Trust me, it means the world to me. It helps the channel more than you know. And let me know down in the comments, now that the hype has faded, what was your favorite boss? Your favorite area? I'd love to reach you. So long, Tarnished, and don't you dare go holo.